All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You all can watch what I'm going to be demoing on Canvas. And if you have a question, just speak up. I think that might be easiest because I don't have anyone keeping an eye on the chat today, but you are also welcome to put things in there and I will take a look later on. So this session is going to be looking at how to give grading and feedback in Canvas. This is something that PNCA faculty are being asked to start using this fall term. And we're going to be having some discussions around inclusive pedagogy that really will go into how to build a rubric effectively, what types of criteria to use, why it's important to use things like rubrics and have a lot of transparency when you grade. So I think that keeping in mind that this is all part of a larger conversation is important. And what I'm going to show you today are sort of just the technical tools that you can use to set yourself up. So practicing using this will be really helpful. It'll get you ahead. And our dean will be leading us through how using grading in Canvas will be more enforced as we proceed with teaching in it. For those of you that are not PNCA faculty, I would definitely ask your department heads or deans, you know, what's expected of you at your school. So this is just a test course that I'm working with, but I've imported some course materials. I am an instructor as well as a staff member. So I have experience teaching myself. I am not an expert, but I do my best. And I wanted to start first with looking at assignment. So anytime that you create an assignment, a discussion, or a quiz, those are the three elements in Canvas that can be graded. All of them get pooled into this assignments category on your Canvas site. So you can see them all here, and they're usually just sort of listed out. I have a lot in here. And with this assignment tool, you have the ability to group them into assignment groups, which can be really powerful for grading. To make an assignment group, you just hit this plus sign here, and you can name your group. I have already made groups. You can then drag assignments around from one group to another, sort them all out. So it sort of depends how you work. If you already have a lot of assignments, but you don't have groups yet, you can make the groups later, or you can make them first and then add the assignments to them. It doesn't matter what order you do it in. But I have five main groups, and I have these defined on my syllabus as well. So this lines up with my syllabus. And they are, for me at least, projects, which are the visual work that my students are making, written work, which are usually reading responses and you know, any kind of proposals that they're doing. I teach studio courses in photography, so that's where I'm coming from. Technical exercises, where I'm having them upload like screenshots of work they're doing in software, any kind of skill building. And then I have an attendance and participation. So these are all the things they're getting graded on. And as you can see on the right side, what is really powerful about using assignment groups is that you can make each of these categories worth a percentage of their final grade. So you can see I've divided it up. And that correlates with my syllabus then. So in order to do that, you need to hit these three dots on the right side and say assignment group weight. This will show all the assignment groups. It'll let you distribute these percentages however you want. And you can really do whatever, you know, you decide on. It's good to talk to your department head so that you're all sort of on the same page with what is being expected. It should all add up to 100%, and it'll do that math for you. But what is really cool about using this tool is that then when you have all of these projects that they're doing through the semester, each one will be graded. And at the end of the term, or actually live during the term, the grades will all be averaged out. And then the average of all of those collective assignments will be worth 45% of the total. So Canvas does some math for you, which is very nice. Does anyone have questions about assignment group weights? Just unmute yourself if you do.
With the,
Yeah.
we go back to projects again and expand it.
Yeah.
So each project is worth particular points, but those don't have to add up to like 100. Like I always try to do everything in multiples of 100, but in this way you don't have to do that, right? Because
yeah, if you're not using assignment group weights, then your points do kind of have to add up.
right.
But if you are using group weights, what's great about it is that all of your assignments are worth certain amounts of points, right? Like these two are, I put 25 points. This is a 5-point assignment. So if one thing is worth 25 and another is worth 5, when Canvas averages them out, it'll know that the 25 points is worth more than the 5 points. So you should sort of think of a system where some assignments are worth more than others.
Mhm.
Like if a student's working on something long-term, I usually give it like 25 points. And if it's a short-term, like this shooting exercise, I assigned it 5 points because that's just a 1-week turnaround. So having some sort of framework for this is worth less, this is worth more is really helpful, but you don't have to do the math to have them add up.
Thanks.
So Teresa,
Yeah.
If we don't use the weighting system, like I just do the point system because the weighting just does not make sense to me in my head at all. So in that case, I wouldn't have to use the groupings, correct?
Yeah, and then don't use the grouping.
Okay.
Yeah, but Canvas won't do any averaging for you. Okay, so I wanted to start up with that. And then I just wanted to review a little bit about setting up an assignment so that I can show you how to make a rubric for it. I know that Sarah led this morning. You can always start an assignment here in the assignment tool by hitting this plus assignment button. But I always like to build my content through modules because it forces me to keep it structured so students can see. So I have a module here called test assignments, which I'm using for these demos. Down below, you can see this is my structure for my class where I have a week 1 module with all the content for the first week of class, a week 2 module, and it has a variety of different things like a first week overview, which is just a page explaining what they're doing in that first class, what's going to be expected, some links to things, and students can go through the whole week and sort of see what's coming. I publish it each week. But from your module, you can hit this plus button to add content directly to it. And you have this whole category of things you can add. The 3 things that can be graded, as I said before, are assignment, quiz, and discussion. So we'll just do an assignment first, because I think that is most often what we'll be doing. And if you want to create an assignment new, you've got to click on that, and we'll give it a name. We'll say test assignment, and we'll add the item. It just adds it to your module. Then to edit it, you can click on the title, and that takes you into your assignment. You also have to hit edit again. And you can add any content you want here to explain the assignment and what's expected. You can also embed a video, a document, links, so you can make it as complex as you want. This is where you're going to choose how many points it's worth. And remember, keep in mind, like, is this a long-term assignment, short-term? Can sort of define how many points. Let's just say this is 5 points. Or actually, I'm going to say 25 for the sake of something I'll show you. You can choose here, if you've set up your groups, which group to put it in. And I think this is an important one. You can display the grade that students see. You can say it's not graded. That's a way to collect, to basically just give them something quick to do in class. It's not going to be graded. You can do complete, incomplete. So you have lots of options, but I often choose display grade as letter grade. And that's because PNCA gives letter grades at the end of term. So I want to be consistent with what students are used to seeing for their grades, so they get an idea of what they can expect at the end of term. And what this does is it'll convert whatever points you end up assigning them based on your rubric, which I'm going to show you, into a letter grade. We'll see how that works in a few minutes. And then you can decide, does this have a submission? If it's something they're doing in class, maybe it doesn't have a submission. Like if you're grading them on their participation, they're not submitting anything for that. But often it'll just be an online submission, and it'll you'll be clicking this box, file uploads. That's sort of the most broad. It'll let them upload PDFs, JPEGs. They can comment on it if they want to. I often say that I want to allow unlimited attempts in case a student messes up and wants to edit what they submitted. This is going to be something that will be looked at next week. We've implemented Turnitin, which is the plagiarism software, and you'll see it's right there. So if you want to use that, I would definitely attend those 2 sessions that are being offered next week. But that's why we have that new box there. You can also make an assignment a group assignment to be done by several students. You can check this box and you can set up groups ahead of time through the people tool. I've done a group in here. And you can also choose to assign grades to each student rather than to a group. So that's an option if you want to look into that.
Can I
And
ask
you
a
can also,
question?
oh yeah.
When we're thinking about students submitting, you know, whether it's writing or visual work digitally, can they do it through like a Google Doc? Like, can it be linked to a Google Doc, or does it somehow need to go into the Canvas system in a different way?
So you could check here for an online submission, a website URL, and then they can just copy a Google Doc.
Okay.
I honestly, yeah, that could be something that they could do. Trying to think of what other things. They could always put it in the comments. Is that so you could edit it with
Yeah,
them?
I mean,
Like,
that
look at the
they're
Google Doc?
working with a lot of writing over the course of the semester, as well
Right.
as image. It's just a more
Yeah,
it's
that would be a nice option then. to have the
user-friendly
URL.
kind of way to have back and forth
Mm-hmm.
student as
Yeah.
they're developing stuff. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, and then peer reviews is another option that you'll see pop up. I don't know if Sarah looked at this with all of you, but there is this ability for you to allow for peer reviews, which is sometimes fun, like for artist statements, maybe they're looking at each other's work and giving feedback. You can manually assign people who to review who, or you can ask Canvas to do it for you and say, like, I want each person to be reviewed by maybe 3 other people. It's a fun tool to use. And you can also make the peer reviews anonymous. There's that option. So that's fun to play around with. The most important thing is to make sure that you assign a due date. So we'll put it in the future, next Friday, let's say, at 5 p.m. And when you do that, the reason why that's super important is so it goes on the student's to-do list. That is how they will remember to get it done. If you forget to put a due date, it will go out of their brain most likely. Available from means they can start to see it as soon as you publish it, as long as you set the date. So I often set it to the same time I'm making it right now. And then you can have it available until, and I often leave this blank so that people have the option to turn things in late if they need to make it up. You never know what types of excuses might pop up. But if you want to have a hard date where people cannot turn anything in after it, you can put that in there. There's also the ability to assign it just to specific students in your class. So you could say, this is an assignment, it's a makeup assignment, it's only for Colin. It's not for anyone else. Or you could have it due at this time for everyone, but let's say Colin, who's in my class, has an accommodation and you're going to give him an extension until the 31st. So you can choose different due dates for different people, which is really nice to be able to do that. So I just wanted to show you those options. I'm going to hit save. And after you've gone through all of your assignment setup options, which are very similar for quiz and especially discussion is really similar, there is a rubric button here. On discussion and quiz, you'll see the rubric through this 3-dot menu, kind of hidden. But rubric, if you click on it, is a way that you can be really transparent with the expectations that you have for students around the assignment. And you can give yourself a really easy, objective way to grade student work. So this is why this is an important tool to use. If you've never used one before, it can really be a huge relief so that your subjectivity doesn't blur or bias your grading. So you can start with a brand new rubric. If you've never done it before, you might title it because you're going to be able to save and reuse all of your rubrics. And you will want to think of what criteria you're going to be using to grade it and how you would describe it. You'll also want to think of how many criteria. So I said that this assignment was 25 points. So I could have like 5 criteria worth 5 points each. You want the points for the rubric to add up the points that the assignment's worth. So it should go hand in hand. And the way that you would edit this is you can click on this little pencil here, and this should be the shorthand description. So it could be like concept, and then a longer description so the student understands. Strength of the idea behind your work. I'm just making this up, but you can be as detailed as you want here. You can also give a range of points, right? So the student could get 5 points or 0 points, or maybe 3 points in the middle. And you can be really descriptive with this, like they'll get 5 points for this criteria if they did the following. You don't have to do this, but it is helpful. So you can be as detailed as you want here, as specific as you want with the different types of ratings. And then this is how many points they could earn. On the other side, when you're grading, you can also be really specific, and you don't have to give 0 or 5. You can give like a 2.2. It is up to you. If you want, you can check this box down here that says, I'll write free-form comments when assessing students, and it'll get rid of that scale rating. And instead you'll have the option on the other side to write comments for each criteria, which is kind of nice. So they understand why they're getting 3 points, because their concept could have used a little more richness behind it, perhaps. You could give a little more specificity, criteria by criteria. You can also remove the points entirely from the rubric so that it's really just about your feedback on the criteria, and then you give a final grade. So those 2 checkboxes I find to be really useful for adapting a rubric. Does anyone have any questions on creating a rubric from scratch like this? As soon as you want to add another criteria, you hit this plus criteria, and you can add it there, or you can duplicate the same one, and then you can modify it a little bit if you want to set it up very similarly.
Teresa,
Mhm.
are you going to show us how, like, once the students do the assignment, how we like go in and use the
Yes,
rubric?
yeah, that's the next step. This is just setting it up first. And if you have a lot of rubrics, so the beauty of creating rubrics is once you do a few of them, you'll have them to work off of. So if you don't want to set one up from scratch, you can say, find a rubric. And what it will do is it actually shows you all of your courses and all of the rubrics you've used for each of those courses. So you can search very easily here for all your rubrics that you've spent all this time setting up. And I'm going to find one that I know is 25 points here. It's my project rubric, kind of has basic things. And once you select it, you can say, use this rubric. And that will apply that rubric you've worked really hard to build to that assignment. So this has 5 criteria. It all adds up to 25 points. So again, you want to just check that the criteria add up to the same amount of points that you set the assignment to be worth it. So there's a rubric. I'm going to show you what the student sees really quickly. So if I click student view, oh, you know what? Actually, I forgot to publish it. Leave student view, publish, and then go into student view. So they see the test assignment, and all they're seeing is, this is where you explain the assignment. They should see more content. They'll see when it's due, the points, what they need to do, and they see the whole rubric that you've set up here. So it's very transparent in terms of what their expectations are.
Can I ask another question, Teresa?
Yep.
I'm teaching a class that was taught by another faculty member, and I'm teaching it, newly, and I'm able to have access to their site. Can I import their rubric? Or should
the rubrics should be there? And
okay.
If they're not, let me know and we can work on importing them.
So it's possible that I won't have to do that. I can modify them, but I don't have to do them completely from scratch.
Yeah, and that would be ideal, right? Is that you can at
Yes.
least modify them. They should be there. All the content should have been imported when I set
Great.
that test site up for you. So if you ever
Fantastic.
want to reuse a rubric, like you find it, you say,
Yeah.
okay, but then you can also hit that button and modify it a bit too, if you want to tweak
Yeah.
it for the next assignment.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so speed grader. I'm going to show you how this works when you're actually giving student feedback. So you've set your assignment, you've set the rubric, your students are doing their homework. And just to show you a student's view, when they go to your site, they get this home page that has the splash page, whatever you decide to put here. And on the right-hand side, when they're on the course site, they have a to-do list that shows all of the upcoming assignments with due dates. So that one we just made is right there. And they'll have this on their to-do list until they submit something. If it becomes late, it'll have a little warning flag. They will also see it on their calendar. And when they're on their main dashboard, they'll get an accumulation of all of their to-do items from all their different courses. So that's why it's so important to use assignments and put due dates on it, because it really does alert the student. If they have the mobile app, they'll get little reminders and notifications telling them when an assignment's been created and showing them when the due date is. As a faculty member, you also get a fun to-do list that will be on your calendar and on this homepage and on the main dashboard. And it's telling you, you need to grade work once students turn it in. It also says, coming up, there's an assignment that's due tomorrow that students should be submitting work for, so that you can remember, I should probably remind my students also to submit work for that. And if you want to grade it, it's very easy to get to it by clicking on Grade First Week Assignment. This sends you straight into SpeedGrader, which is the window we're looking at now. Another way to get to SpeedGrader is to go to the assignment, maybe through the module or through your assignments tool, and then you'll see SpeedGrader right here on the right side. This also gives you this very nifty option to download all of the submissions in a batch. If you want to be keeping records of student work outside of Canvas, which I recommend all faculty should do for professional practice, this button is how you would do that. It labels each file by student's username, so it will remember that for you. And it tells you how many things have been graded, so you can keep an eye on what you still need to do.
I
If you
got
want to grade
another
it.
question.
Yeah. Mhm.
I really like the idea of the submissions being, something that can be downloaded so that we can use it for professional practice or for accreditation or whatever we need.
Yep.
It makes me wonder where we're at institutionally with like digital portfolio guidelines, like if we're providing faculty with stuff about image size, file size, quality, for still and moving images, like, are we, that seems like something we've tried to do, but I don't think it's been across the board, and just curious.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we still have some work to do to get our standards set for that. And there are a bunch of tools in Canvas we haven't even tapped into yet, where students can, outside of their class, start making a portfolio of all their final work that they share with their professors, or like the work they're most proud of.
Yeah, cool.
And we haven't touched that tool yet. It's called ePortfolio. So
okay.
There's some things I'm going to be working with Jay on, hopefully. There's also an outcomes tool that we haven't put into effect that can track outcomes through all of our classes. Yeah, so to-do list items. SpeedGrader. Okay, so I'm going into SpeedGrader. This is sort of where you have all of the tools to give feedback to students and also just to see their submissions. So this is my first assignment. It's not a real assignment, and these are not real students, just to show you a variety of media. So this student submitted a few JPEGs, and you'll see all the files they submitted here. So if, for example, you said, take 10 images of work and submit them, they'll all be listed here. You can download them individually with these little arrows. You can also click on each image to see the next one. So you can look at all of them. If you want to change students, you can hit this arrow on the top to look at the next student's work. So you can scan through them. And then as far as your grading tools go, you'll see you can just enter in the grade here if you want. But if you want to use the rubric, you can click View Rubric. And this is where this really helps with being able to quickly grade your students' work. So you can always remember, wait, what did I say this criteria is? You can click on it to expand that. And you can give a score. So you can say this is going to be 4 points. And you can hit this comment box if you wanted to say, this is why you're getting 4 instead of 5. You know. So you can go through and grade them. Maybe they get a different set. And it'll total it up for you. You can hit save, 19 points, and then you can go ahead and hit 19 points up here. And when you hit return, since we set this up as a letter grade, it'll convert it to the letter. So 19 out of 25 points is the letter grade of a C. You can add comments below, so it's not just a grade, which is definitely encouraged. This is a big comment box where you can also put an attachment. Studio is a tool that's going away, so we're not going to have the ability any longer to record a video directly here, but you can record a video and then attach it if you would like to. And if the student just really didn't do the assignment correctly, there's this reassign assignment where you can click this button. It's not letting me do it because I already gave a grade, but you can reassign it to them and it sort of turns it back and they have to resubmit it. And it's always good to put a comment there as well, if you're doing that. Something else I wanted to show you was if you are working with Word-based assignments, students can submit Word documents, Microsoft Word documents, or PDF, and you can edit them directly. Pages documents do not display well. It makes you download them to look at them. So definitely discourage them from submitting those kinds of native files or proprietary files, PDF, Word doc. But here you can directly edit or annotate the image. So there are a few tools up here in the toolbar for you to use. Like there's this really neat marker where you can click and then leave a comment. So it's some of the stuff you get in Google Docs, but not the direct editing. You can highlight passages and leave a comment. Let's see, there's just a text box capacity where you can say, oops, I'm gonna make it a little longer. Hold on. I don't know why it's such a tiny box. Okay, I'm not doing a good job, but you can write a little text box. There's a strike through. So some basic tools, and there's even a brush tool where you can like circle parts, draw directly. Like even if you have artwork, this might be useful. If you're saying like this part of the photo is a little out of focus. So you can play around with these tools. This will let you select around with a box and play around with ways you might mark up a essay for feedback that's directly on the document. So one more tool for feedback. Does anyone have questions so far in SpeedGrader, what I've showed you? Great. Students can also, when they submit their assignment, they can add a comment. So you might see a comment from them as well. And you can sort of have a conversation back and forth. You'll get notifications if they submit a comment. Like you can ask them a question here if it's a work in progress and they can write the comment back. They can do a comment at the time of submission. So it is a way to take feedback into another realm, which is really neat. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the student side to get this type of feedback. So let me go into student view. And I'm just going to go to my home. Let's see, actually, I'm going to go into grades. So a student can click on, this is sort of their more limited view of your site. It's always good to use that student view button to see what they're seeing as you're building out your site. Always check to make sure that it looks the way you're expecting it to. If you click on grades, this is what a student will see. So this is a test site that's filled with a lot of different test assignments I've been working on. So there's some funny stuff in here, but they'll see if they're missing an assignment, like, oops, you forgot to turn that in. You're not going to get a good grade on those. So they can sort of see, and then they could click straight into it if they wanted to go in and see if they could submit something. If you gave them a comment, they could quickly click there and see. They can also see the grade they got. They got 8.5 points, which translates to a B. What's this? Oh, they could look at rubrics to see how it broke down. So this is how they can look at all the grades they've been getting and all the feedback. Then they can see the group weights that you'll be grading them on. And at the top, there is a running score that I'm going to come back to talk about, because this can be really misleading for students to sort of have an idea of if they're failing. They might freak out if they see 57%. And I don't think it's always accurate mid-semester. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But this is what students see on the grading side of things. They'll also in the app get notices and be able to look at it right away when you submit your comments and your grade.
On
Can
the
I-
instru-
Oops.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking about numbers and
Mhm.
like 5 points for this or 5 points for that, and how, 4 out of 5 is sort of turns into a 80% or something.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
really in the world that we live in, mostly we're grading between a B and an A. I'm just like,
Mhm.
for lack of whatever, that's just common. So
Mhm.
how much 4.2, 4.4, like how,
Yeah.
what do you
If you
suggest
find yourself, yeah, I
is
would
the
say that's why
sane
for
way
like,
to do it?
right, for longer term assignments, it's better to have more points so you can get really more accurate and have more of a scale to be able
Okay.
to take things off of. I mean, you can even do 100 points assignments if that makes it easier for you. And then it's like, 20 points for each criteria. It's totally your comfort level. But if it's a quick exercise, I often don't do that thing where I check the box that says convert to letter grades. I just leave it as points. So if it's a 5-point exercise, you kind of get a 5 for doing it and a 0 for not doing it, and maybe a 3 if you did it part way kind of deal. And then it doesn't translate to that harsh letter grade. They see it more as points for smaller assignments.
Uh-huh.
I think it's really good for departments to have these conversations so that they're unified together in what they're doing. So students start to develop expectations. And I think, as a school, we probably need to talk a little bit more about it too. But yes, if you want that, if it's 5 points, you're right. A 4 will quickly drop it a whole letter grade. And they'll fail if they get a 2. So you have to think a little bit about how much range you want to give yourself in your grading.
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. On the instructor side, like you showed us what it looks like for a student to check their grades, but if I, as an instructor, want to go in and see all of the students all together lined up and
Yep.
their all their final grades and how do I
Yeah.
do that?
So that's the next thing. Perfect lead in. So here, as an instructor, I'm going to click on grades, and this is the gradebook tool. So this is like a grade roster, and it'll show all of your student names in a column here on the left side. And then there'll be a column for each graded item that's in Canvas. It'll show things that you haven't even published yet. So you'll see them all here. And I have a lot in this site, so they're quite a lot. And as students start to do them, it will populate. Like, this is our first week assignments that I was just playing around with, and I only assigned 1 grade so far, that's the C. These little items mean that I still need to grade this work. And you can click directly in it to assign a grade, or if you click this little right arrow, it takes you to some other options. If you want to go straight into Speed Grader so that you can do your grading, you can click on first week assignment and then Speed Grader, and it takes you in there to get your grading done. Let me see how to get back to gradebook. Hold on, gradebook. So there's some shortcuts there. You'll notice that some things are marked red. That means that students did not turn in work for that. So when someone doesn't turn in work, the deadline has passed, it becomes red. If a student does turn in something, but they turn it in late, it will be blue. And here it's saying, I still need to grade it. So there's some little codes there to remind yourself of when you're going through and grading. And so this will give you a good idea of where everyone is standing. All the way on the right side, if you're using assignment group waste, it has those categories. Here's projects, written work, technical exercises, attendance, participation, and it shows where each student stands for each of these. So you can sort of see, oh, wait, this student is really not doing well in the projects department. Like, let's see what's going on. You can scroll back and see how many they missed. It's a great tool for midterm reviews when you're sitting down with the students and reviewing how they're doing in the class. It will also start to tally up their final grade here. But this final grade will be very skewed if you have not done all of your grading. So if they've turned in work and you haven't graded it, or if they've turned in work, or if they have not turned in assignments and you haven't given them an F, because it might skew upwards. They might think that they're doing great in the class, but actually there's a lot of F's coming their way. You just haven't gotten around to assigning them. So that is a danger there for those final grades being displayed on the student side if you're not up on your grading. There are some advanced tools here in Gradebook. If you click on the settings gear icon, these will really help you. So if you are someone who forgets to give Fs for grades that students, for assignments that students just have not turned in, this checkbox is for you, and I use it all the time. So I say give 55%, which is an F, for all missing submissions. And then automatically, when the deadline passes for an assignment due date, it'll give that student an F, and you don't have to go in and do it. It's a nice red flag for that student. And then if they do resubmit something, it'll show that it's late, and it'll take away the F, and you'll have to apply a new grade. So that is a nice checkbox to check. It's not by default checked. You can also use this if you want to like deduct for late assignments. If you have some sort of system in place, you know, take off this percentage for how many hours or days it's late. I will come back to the attendance grade. I just saw that comment. Grade posting policies. This is kind of a nice one too. Right now, Canvas by default, automatically the grade is sent to the student as soon as you post it in SpeedGrader. But if you want to, for example, you're grading on a curve and you sort of want to get through all of your students and then release the grades all at once, because maybe you might go back and change something, I would click on this button. What this allows you to do is go through SpeedGrader, assign all of the comments and all the grades. It won't post on the student end until you go in here and there's an option to post grades. It'll show its grade out right now because I didn't select that, but there'll be an option to post all the grades. The trick is that you have to remember to actually do that. I did have a faculty member have this set up, and then they were saying, my students are saying they're not getting their grades because they didn't actually release them. So remember to do that. It's through those three dots if you want to release them all at the same time. One last advanced tip is that you can allow a final grade override, which means that instead of Canvas just calculating it based on all of your grades, it will let you modify the final grade. And I think this is useful if you have something like an attendance policy where someone fails if they miss 3 classes, because then you can fail them for something like that. Or maybe they get a bonus grade if they do X, Y, and Z in the class. So that's a nice option.
Teresa,
Yeah.
along those lines, can you put in extra credit so it's like doesn't count against them? So it's like out of 0 or something?
Yeah, so if you want to do an extra credit assignment, there are a few different ways to do it. If it's just a standalone extra credit assignment, you can have the assignment worth 0 points so that students who don't do it don't get any deductions, but students who do it just get points added. Or let's say they went way out of their way in an assignment that was worth 25 points and you want to give them extra credit for that, you could grade above those 25 points. So that student might get 28 points, and that's sort of extra credit on that assignment. All right, let me see if there's anything else I want to show. Oh, this is a really neat thing. Here, if you click on these three dots, so this is where you would release grades if you had chosen that method. There's also this new feature called Message Students Who, and you can click on it, and it allows you to message students who have not yet submitted, have not been graded, or scored more than, or scored less than, or had their assignments reassigned. I have most often used it for have not yet submitted, because it's really neat to be able to say, hey, you didn't turn this in, please turn it in. And it hides it, it keeps it private. It's like a BCC email, and it's so quick and easy to do. You can say, I noticed you didn't turn this assignment in, please make sure to. So I thought that was a cool feature. It was kind of hidden in there. All right, the next thing I wanted to do, one more thing, view. You can arrange your grade book to sort of hide different columns, filter them, change the way that you're seeing them, what order you're seeing them. So you can play around with the view column here if you wanted to see them displayed in a different order. And up here too, you can just look at certain assignment groups. So when you're just looking through it, that helps, or certain modules. That's what all of these things up here are for. I'm going to go into attendance next. So one of the tools that Canvas can be used for is attendance. And if you click on it here, it will take you to that tool. Some faculty still like to take attendance in, on paper or in a roll book. That is totally fine if you don't want to use this tool. But if the internet cooperates, it will show you how you can use this tool. It's called Roll Call in Canvas. And it will have a whole roster of all of the students enrolled in your class, and you'll be able to mark them as present, absent, or late. The main problem with this tool is that is all the options you have. There's no option for an excused absence. So unfortunately, what I end up doing if someone has an excused absence is I mark them as present so it doesn't count against them. And then I have to keep a note that they were actually absent that week. It was just excused. So each week, and you can find the week here and the day, you can go through and mark your students and use this to do that. And as you do this, if you want it to, it will calculate a grade based on their attendance record. You don't have to use that grade, but it is really useful. If you do want to use it, you can go to this little icon here and say roll call settings. And you want to uncheck this box if you want it to count towards the final grade. If you don't want it to count, check the box. Really simple. And then you can count a lateness as a certain percentage. I usually do 33 because I say if you're late 3 times, it equals 1 absence. So you can do that. And you can also generate an attendance report. So if you click on this, you have a bunch of options. You can do your start and end date. So at the end of term, if you want to just look at where everyone stands, or even like midterm, you could do start and end date. If you want it for a specific student, you can enter in their ID number, and it will email you a spreadsheet. So you can go through and sort of see where everyone stands. So you don't have to scroll back through all the dates in the tool. When you use this, it will show up in your assignments as one of your graded assignments. And I like to drag it under attendance. So I make its own group, call it attendance, say it's 5% of the total grade. And it's in here and it's counting right now as 100 points. If you click on it, it's going to go straight to the tool. If you want to edit it, you can go here and go to edit. And you can change the points if you don't want it to be worth 100 points. Honestly, it doesn't matter if it's the only one that's in there. But that's where it lives in terms of how much it's worth and how it's counting towards their final grade. Does anyone have questions about that tool? If you don't want to use that tool, if you're taking attendance yourself, remember that you can always set up an assignment by clicking assignment, have them have no submission for it, and just give a grade to each student at the end of term based on your own, note keeping of their attendance grade that they should be getting. So if you have a different system, you don't like the way Canvas does it, you can still incorporate it into the grade book.
So if we do use the attendance, then
Mhm.
it automatically propagates into the grading, like right there, the roll call attendance that just automatically propagated because we had attendance days.
Yes, except that you want to make sure if you want it to count towards a grade that you go to this little gear icon and that this is unchecked. Just double check and make sure it's unchecked so that it actually is counting.
And then I can change the number of points. So like attendance is worth 100 points. I can't make like each day is worth a number of points, or is that the same thing, just backwards?
I think it's going to change. Like if your class meets 100 times in a semester, each day will be weighted less than if it meets only 16 times in one semester. Yes, and I'm seeing another chat, like there's no way to be super specific here, like 3 absences equals a 4% grade reduction. You can't do calculations like that. So you would need to do that outside of Canvas. Some people I think might use this just to keep records, and then they calculate their own grades and create an assignment with a grade that you put in there. And I'll just remind you again, like if you're starting an assignment for that kind of thing, you can call it attendance. The students never have to see your back end of it. This is for attendance grade. You can do this for participation too. I spelled that wrong. Oh well, that's fine. You can make it worth however many points you decide. You can put it in attendance, display the grade as letter grade, and then the submission type would be no submission because students aren't submitting something for attendance or participation. The due date, I would put a due date on it because you might want it for yourself, maybe at the end of term, right? And it doesn't really even need to be available because students aren't submitting anything. So you can save it. Students will see they're going to get a grade on this, but they don't have to do anything for it. And when you are ready, you can go to Speed Grader for it and just enter in the grade for each student based on your own calculation. So that's kind of how you can give feedback for things that aren't requiring students to turn in anything on Canvas.
Is there oh, sorry. I just follow up. Is there a university policy? Like I know at my last university, there was like an overarching policy that if you missed more than X% of classes, you automatically failed a class. Because I know usually professors have their own like attendance policy, but then there's like the overarching university one as well.
Right. I would look at the syllabus template that you have to check on that. Because I think that each college at Willamette has a little bit different policies. PNCA is definitely working on a unified attendance policy, and I would check with your department chair as well. Melissa. Did you have a question, Melissa? I see your hand raised.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, now I can hear you. Yep.
My laptop was closed. So that was going to be my question too. The syllabus template that I was given says that student attendance is weighted in Canvas as 20% of the overall course grade. 3 lateness departures equals 1 absence, and 5 absences is grounds for immediate failure. So that's like a lot of parameters that Canvas doesn't really seem to accommodate for. So I've always struggled with like, I kind of have just told students that this is the policy and I will take roll call. And so that you can always see what your attendance is, but it's your job to know that if you're missing a lot, like how that's going to affect your grade. But I think that sucks that it's not as easy for students to get a quick assessment of how their attendance is affecting their grade.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is. So if it was 20% of the final grade, Canvas does have that ability to then use a graded, a weighted group. So this would be 20% if you want to align it with what's on the syllabus.
Yeah.
And then what was the other part? Oh yeah, 3 late equals 1 absence. So we did look at that. That was in this tool. going into settings and setting a lateness to count as 33%.
Yeah.
The one thing that Canvas doesn't do out of those requirements is if you miss 5 classes, you will fail the class. So that's on the students and you then to keep track of how many classes they've missed. And you can either go through each day that you have class here or do an attendance report. And I would do that midterm. And then as we get towards the end of term, especially for students that you're like, they have not been around a lot, I'm doing an attendance report. Oh, it looks like that student has missed 4 classes. You can send them the report too, so they can see. Yeah. So it does it.
Thank you. I guess
Yeah.
I guess I struggle with setting attendance as 20% of the grade. It seems like
I know that is a lot of the grade,
well, like,
right? Yeah.
yeah, I just don't even
But that
like
is a
setting it up.
pedagogy question. It's not like a
Yeah,
Canvas skills
exactly.
question. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that would be something to take up
Something I'm
with
struggling
the
with.
chair. Yeah, department chair.
That's what I was gonna ask too. Are we supposed to like follow that exactly? Like if it's written in there and that's the rules, do we have to do that?
Is this the PNCA syllabus that we're talking about?
I don't
Yeah.
know, Melissa. It is.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it's the
It is.
syllabus template for PNCA.
Okay, then I think we are supposed to. I know that academic affairs was working on revising this. So I think we are supposed to, but again, have that conversation with your department chair to check, because that is quite a lot of the final grade, you're right. And as you can see, I in the past have done 5%, so I'm gonna need to rethink mine. I obviously have some work to do for my class this fall that I have not gotten to yet. So yeah.
I would just add, like, classes that are super discussion based or critique based, participation is huge. Like it can't, it's, participation and attendance are significant, so.
Yeah, and maybe that's all wrapped into one of them. That 20% catches participation also. I don't, it
Yeah.
would be hard to have a separate participation grade on top of that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I don't want to advise on it too much because I'm supposed to be showing you the tools, which it can almost do. It just can't do that final grading, like failing after 5 absences. Let's see. What other things do they have to show you? Are there any other questions of things I've covered so far? I just have a few more little tips to show you, but I've covered most of the basics. Okay, there's one more thing I wanted to show you in this assignment group. This is kind of a special case scenario, but I think it's kind of cool. So let's say you've made assignment groups, you've put assignments into it. And this question actually came from an art history instructor who was having her students, she had 10 different like response writings that they were supposed to do, or that they had been assigned, and they needed to choose 8 out of 10 to actually do. 2 of them they didn't have to do. So she was giving them some choice, and she wanted to know how to grade that so that the 2 they didn't do wouldn't count as F. I thought it was a really cool option, and it turns out Canvas has that capacity. So first you would want to make your assignment group, and you'd want to have at least placeholders for those 10 assignments. And I have a lot in here. So once you've done that, you can click on these little dots here and say edit for the assignment group. And it allows you to like change the title of the assignment group, change the percentage of the total grade. But then it also has this advanced option of to ignore a certain amount of lowest scores or highest scores. So if you are telling students you need to do 8 out of 10 assignments and you have 10 in there, you can say ignore the 2 lowest scores. And that way those 2 that they didn't submit for, that they got presumably get Fs on, will be ignored. They won't count towards anything. Let's say there's one assignment they have to do. You can also say never drop, and then you could choose the assignment that they absolutely have to do. So I thought that was kind of a cool advanced way to work with assignment groups and build some flexibility. I just wanted to show that to anyone that might be useful for.
That's cool. Could you do that? I'm not going to do the weighting, but can I do assignment groups where I have like, it's all point based, but like one of the assignment groups are quizzes. And then I go into the quizzes and I say like, drop the lowest quiz grade.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it for any of them. If you want to be kind and just say, I'll forgive you for your worst work, yeah, your worst quizzes. That's how you do that. Yeah, has a lot of applications, I think. So it's kind of neat. And you also don't have to have the assignment group weighted. It could just be an assignment group you know, without this weighted percentage, and you're still doing that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, assignments have a lot of flexibility in them in the sense that, remember, you can always have the assignment be something that is just a complete or incomplete, or maybe it's not graded. So it's something that there's just an exercise they're doing. Maybe it's something they're doing in class and not submitting to Canvas, but you want to give feedback on it. So there are creative ways to think about it. It's not just this like, I'm collecting a digital file and I'm giving you a grade. It doesn't have to be that transactional. You can get a little more sophisticated with it and still use Canvas to keep track of all your grades. I think a lot of faculty sort of think, I don't want to use Canvas for grading because it doesn't capture like grading things that are happening in the classroom. I'm not doing everything on Canvas, and that's okay. You can adapt it to do that. That's all I really had to show you, but I'm happy to take any questions. Remember that if you want to look at your rubrics, you can click on this and see all the rubrics for your class. So if you wanted to set up rubrics before you're even applying them to assignments, you can go ahead and do that. You can also share rubrics with other instructors, I think. Let me see if this is the way. I'm not going to see it right here. There are ways to do that, though, to share it with other instructors if your department head wants to share rubrics. Yeah. Well, thank you all. Yeah.
I had a quick question, Teresa. How does
Of course, please.
how does a complete or incomplete factor into the, like, what does that equal in the grade book?
I am not sure. I honestly haven't done it that much. I would think it's either like a fail or a A. I don't know. Should I try to do it and just see what that looks like? I'll set up a quick assignment. Let's see. Incomplete test. So we'll make it 50 points. So I would think they're going to either get 50 or 0, but let's see what happens. I'll put it in like participation, and it'll be complete, incomplete, due tomorrow. I don't know if I really have to do that, but I'll do it. Available today. Save. Publish. And then let's pretend I'm a student. Oh, they're not even submitting anything, so I don't have to do that. Let's go into SpeedGrader and give them a grade. Complete, incomplete, or excused. So let's say complete, incomplete, excused, just to give it a test. Okay. And then I will go into the grade book and we'll see if I can find that. What was it called again? There it is. So it's just a check or an X. It's not telling me like how it calculates it. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I might have to see like how that ends up, you know, factoring into the calculations at the end. Because I thought maybe it would display as 50 points or 0 points, but it's just check or X. So I don't have a good answer. I'll have to get back to you on that. Sorry.
No worries.
I will write it down.
Thanks for
Yeah.
trying.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Teresa. It's really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will put the recording on the Google Docs that has all of the invitations so you can look at it again.
Thanks, Teresa.
And yeah, you're welcome. I'm always available to help you and look at your grade books with you if you run into issues. Bye.